Hello, welcome to my channel. I thought I'd do a quick sketch today, something easy because I'm waiting around for someone to come and boost my car. The battery's dead. And so I wanted something to do that I was familiar with. And roses are the thing for me. I must have painted hundreds of them over the years. And when I need to paint, and I like to paint every single day, I usually go to roses as a relaxing thing to do. Hydrangea flowers are another one that I find easy to paint, almost a meditation. It's something to do when I like to relax and paint. But today I chose roses. I wanted to put my roses in a glass vase, and I like the vase to be even on both sides because I just cannot freehand that. So I do it on tracing paper. I fold the tracing paper in half, draw one side of the vase, turn the whole thing over and trace the other side of the vase. And then I make sure that I've got pencil on both sides of the paper. And then I can transfer it to my canvas by just drawing over the pencil line. It's very simple to do, and I get a vase that's pretty much looks the same on both sides. Usually when I do this painting, I do the background first and then put, if I'm going to use a drawing, I put the drawing on top of that background. With roses, I usually freehand them unless there's a vase. If there's a vase, I do, as I just said, a tracing and then put the tracing on the board. But today I didn't do the background first, and it's not a tragedy. It's quite easy to paint around. I usually do a sort of yellow and blue that translates into a greenish background. And it's a nice organic type of background for this type of painting. I find it works well as a background for roses. And I use raw sienna as a tabletop. And I usually put some raw umber and some alizarin crimson in the tabletop too, just to give it a little interest. You might choose other colours. I haven't experimented that much. Raw sienna and alizarin crimson work well for me, and that's what I usually use. And as you can see, to give a mistiness to it, I add white and blend that in. Sometimes I use a blending brush, a powder brush that I get from the dollar store, but other times I just leave it. I like the texture sometimes I don't. I'm using a liner brush for my stems and leaves, and I'm not really that particular about where I put them. I'm sort of getting a balance in there if I can, and they may or may not stay, I have to be honest. And they won't stay this color for sure. They will be green, variations of green, a mid-tone green, a shadow green, and mixing in yellow, a highlight. I always have a star rose for the rose flowers, and that's the one that gets the most light, most highlight. And I usually make that almost white, if not white altogether. And the other two I sort of place in more shadow. One gets a little bit more light than the other. And that way I think there's some variation. It's more interesting to look at. So I put straight alizarin crimson as a base for two of them, and I mix in a little white for my star rose, and the petals on my star rose are done with straight titanium white. If there's any pink in there, it's accidental, believe me. For the petals, I pull them from the outer edge in toward the center of the flower, the large outer ones and the small inside ones. For the petals that you don't see anything but the tops of, I use a sideways swipe. And for the lower petals that you see almost the entire petal, I do the same thing, pull it in from the outside edge in toward the center of the flower. And I think that gives me quite a realistic looking, full-blown rose. I don't often do bud type roses. For the ones that are in shade, I use some of the alizarin in with the white, and I only put straight white on the very tips of those petals that are hit by a highlight. It's I think it works that way. Let's put it that way. But I think you can see that the star of the show is the white flower that is most lighted, if that's a word. My advice when painting rose flowers is to stand back every now and then and decide if you have enough petals or if the flower looks balanced enough. And just don't be afraid, just insert those petals, those sideways swipes, or even a full petal if it's needed. You can add those at any time. I've gone in like hours after I've painted a flower and decided that it needs more petals, and I've just added them. That's the nice thing. Did I say I'm painting with acrylics? That's the nice thing about painting with acrylics. And you hardly have to wait for any drying time with acrylics, another good reason to paint with them. And anyway, I do add extra petals in on this flower as I go along. I only realized as I began editing that I don't have the full vase in the picture. So my advice with painting glass vases is to keep it as simple with as few strokes as possible. Do a highlight, a reflected light, to which I do a highlight with straight titanium white, and then a reflected light on the opposite side, to which I've added a little blue just to give it an off-white look. I use a little trick by adding a reflected window, just window shapes, and I set the vase on the table by using either French ultramarine blue or raw umber to give it a shadow in the base. A reflection in the tabletop is nice too. It does add to the illusion. The white dulls down a little as it dries, so I usually reinforce it several times during the painting, maybe 3 or 4. And as you can see, I used my fingers to erase the part that I didn't like. I find I do that quite a bit. I'm not strictly a brush person or a knife person. I've started painting with palette knives recently, and I'm really enjoying that. So you might see roses with palette knives one of these days. I might actually have done that already now I come to think of it, but I've got so many videos it would be hard to find it, so I'll do it again. So I'm mixing up this mid-tone green to do some leaves. I'm using sap green, primary yellow, and some titanium white. And I mix it till I get the colour that will be between the shadow and the highlight. I add the shadow after I've got my mid-tone on, and then I come in last with the highlight, and I might reinforce the highlight as it dries. It does contain the titanium white, which does dull down a little as it goes on, so I quite often reinforce the highlight on my leaves as well. And the shadow, I use French ultramarine blue mixed with the sap green. I find that makes a nice shadow. And you can use other colours. You could use raw sienna. That also makes quite a nice shadow colour. It's transparent, and it doesn't alter the green so much as just bring it down a notch. Today I'm using a Q-tip to put in the stamens. I find that's quite a nice way. You do get them separated a little bit. I like that. And if you don't want to do that, you can use a small round brush or even a liner brush. They work quite well to put in the little dots that you need. And I start off with raw sienna. I add alizarin to it just to give it a little brightness. And then I mix the alizarin with yellow to give me an orange highlight on the top of that. I don't think I did that well with the highlight in this particular picture. Maybe I'll do better next time. I don't beat myself up if I am not entirely happy with the picture. I think, well, you know, that was today's painting, but maybe tomorrow's will be better. You have to give yourself a break and let things go, I find. Now you don't see it very well. I'll probably cut this bit out, but I'm developing the glass vase. And I just use straight titanium white to put in those reflected windows. And I put in a line of white wherever I think the glass would catch the highlight. It's difficult to explain. When you've done it often enough, you'll get your glass looking more glassy than you ever think you could. Some of my vases are spectacular, I have to let you know. But for the most part, it takes practice to do it. And even I've been doing it for 30 years and I still have my off days with glass. It's a little bit of a wrangle. I'm also putting in shadow with French ultramarine blue mixed with the sap green. And I did not develop my stems in this painting. I forgot all about them. But usually I do much more with my stems. I think they deserve to be interesting. And I usually put on alizarin crimson, which is, I've got to be honest, is my favorite color. And I usually add a little highlight and a little shadow to them. But I completely forgot them in this painting. I always say I'll do better tomorrow. You can only just see it in this little bit of the video, but I added color where the roses hung over the vase. I added the pink of the roses into the glass vase. That helps with the illusion as well. Here I'm adding more highlight to the petals, making them stand out just a little bit more. And I've got the finger going in there. I'm sure most professional artists don't use their fingers as much as I use mine. But I do find it helpful, and I do get covered in paint, I have to admit. Here I'm adding extra petals. As I said, it's never too late to add the odd petal. So here it is, and for a quick sketch I think it turned out quite nicely. The vase is a little bit wonky. I do try hard with them, but they are a little bit beyond me. And I could have added more leaves, I feel. But on the whole, I think I like it. I think I'm okay with it. And yeah, I'm okay with it. Hope you like it too. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. It helps my channel grow. Please like, share and subscribe if you can. You'll be appreciated forever if you do that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.